of delivery vans eager to make their last deliveries, chauffeurs of private motor cars urged on by homeward-bound businessmen, and motormen of service cars packed to suffocation with human freight, hurled anathemas under their breath at the traffic police whose upraised hands halted them at every crossing, forcing them to creep uptown at a snail's pace. The clang of gongs and the shrill cries of the newsboys added to the confusion. Down Broadway, stemming the human tide, came a patrol of Boy Scouts. They wore the regulation uniform, broad-brimmed hats, and each carried a stout staff. It was the Blue Tortoise Patrol, 8 sturdy lads marching 2 and 2 behind their leader, a clean-cut, well-built boy of 15, upon whose hat appeared the oxidized silver of the patrol leader's first-class scout badge. In their faces was none of the strain and weariness of the crowd through which they made their way. Instead, they were alight with anticipation, for they were on their way to the ferry for an afternoon hike on the Jersey meadows. Just ahead of them, the great Flatiron Building, dividing 2 of the city's chief thoroughfares, swam in a haze of heat and dust. As they approached it, there was a sudden rush of people from the sidewalk toward the middle of the street, where they crowded and jammed and almost in a second had completely blocked traffic. A burly policeman forced his way through and stooped over something, then rising asked if there was a doctor present. There was none, and the policeman turned to drive back the crowd while a fellow officer, who had come up, forced his way to the nearest box to send a call for an ambulance. "What's the matter, officer?" a voice called. "Don't know, a fit or faint or something of the kind," growled the policeman, vainly trying to drive the crowd back. "Back there! Stand back! Give us room!" he roared. Then, wriggling through as only boys can wriggle, 9 khaki-clad figures suddenly sprang to his aid. They were the members of the Blue Tortoise Patrol. While the officer tried to drive the crowd back, the patrol leader knelt beside the limp figure. It was that of an old man, shabbily dressed. He was unconscious, and his face was red and skin hot and dry. Occasionally he gave a little gasping sigh. "It's sunstroke!" exclaimed the scout leader, and at once began to loosen the man's clothing. Calling one of his patrol to his aid, he bade the latter shade the victim's face with his hat, while he himself bathed face, neck, and chest with cool water from his canteen. Under this treatment, the sufferer was beginning to show signs of returning consciousness as the clang of an ambulance gong scattered the crowd. The young white-coated surgeon made a hasty examination. As the patient was lifted into the ambulance, he turned to the young scout leader and gravely gave him the scout's salute. "Sunstroke! You did just the right thing. I congratulate you," he said tersely. He swung up on the rear step of the ambulance, the gong clattered, and the crowd melted away as quickly as it had gathered. The leader of the Blue Tortoise Patrol slung his canteen over his shoulder and turned to his followers. "Fall in," he commanded, and then there was a wild yell of, "Oh, you won't!" A big touring car had just drawn up to the opposite sidewalk, and from the front seat a boy of about the leader's own age was leaning and wildly swinging his hat. In the tonneau sat a gray-haired man whose keen eyes twinkled with pleasure. "Hal Harrison, where and under the sun did you come from?" shouted the patrol leader, quite forgetting his patrol and rushing across with left hand extended for the scout grip. "Got home yesterday. Tried to get you on the phone this morning, but couldn't connect. Say, we saw you giving that poor chap first aid just now. It was great. Bully for the Blue Tortoise Patrol. Where are you fellows going? Why can't I go along too?" Hal paused for breath. "Put your brakes on, son, and pull down to low gear," laughed Mr. Harrison, leaning forward and extending a hand to the patrol leader. "Upton, how are you? I see you haven't forgotten the practical things that Dr. Merriam taught you at Woodcraft last summer. Suppose you climb in here with us, and we'll move on. I see the cop over yonder is beginning to eye us a bit uneasily." This suggestion recalled to Upton the fact that he had deserted his patrol. "I'm afraid I can't accept," he replied regretfully. "You see, I'm taking my patrol out for a hike, and it would hardly do to desert them. I guess it's a pleasure which has suddenly become a duty," he added. "Nonsense! You didn't suppose we would tempt you to desert, did you?" laughed Mr. Harrison. "Hi, Scouts! Tumble in here, every one of you. I guess we can stow you away somewhere," he shouted.